This is an update to the update on PPP loan fraud. I'm Diane Bass. I'm a criminal defense attorney and I have been defending people in criminal cases for about 25 years. Most recently, PPP loan fraud is a huge thing that's happening. The U.S. Department of Justice is charging a lot of people with PPP loan fraud cases. I have several of these cases right now, and I'm going to go into the three types of cases that I'm seeing and how they're being prosecuted and the kinds of outcomes that I'm seeing on these cases. Additionally, I'm going to give you some other updates based on my inside information. So yesterday I attended a meeting at the SBA, the Small Business Administration, who is responsible for these COVID relief funds. There are two different kinds of loans, the PPP loans and the EIDL loans, and the government is prosecuting both of these when it comes to fraud. So I asked the SBA agent, are you guys charging the smaller loans, like the $20,000 loans? And he said, it depends on where you are. So in the smaller states or the less populated states, there is a possibility that they will be charging the smaller loans, especially if there are other aggravating factors. In California, he said probably not. He is one of only 6 agents in his office in Los Angeles. Now, of course, the HSI, Homeland Security, FBI, IRS are also involved in these investigations, but SBA is an integral part of these investigations, and I think that they initiate with them. I'm not 100% sure, but that was straight from the horse's mouth, saying it just depends on where you are in the country, but probably not California. So the three kinds of cases that I have seen are the following. The first is somebody who is filling out loan applications for other individuals and taking a commission. So there may be one person who has reached out to a bunch of people, either personally, directly, or through friends, and said, hey, we can apply for you. And they submit fake information or false information in the loan applications. The people who are submitting the loans are actually signing the documents and everything. So the person who's going to ultimately receive the money hasn't seen the documents, hasn't signed the documents. They don't know anything about what has been submitted on their behalf. Sometimes they do know, sometimes they don't know. Oftentimes these people receive way more money than they were anticipating, and they're shocked when the money hits their account, and then they give 25% or 30% to these people. In one case, up to 75% is taken by the person who submits the loan applications, not the person who actually gets the money. Then that person has to pay them their commission. So those people, the people who are filling out the loan applications for other people, are being charged with PPP loan fraud, and those are the more serious cases. They take the total amount of all of the loans, and then the sentence is based on the amount. And I've talked about this in my PPP loan fraud sentencing video, where the federal sentencing guidelines tell you, based on the amount of loss, what your sentence could be in a federal case. That is the starting point. The federal sentencing guidelines are always the starting point in a sentence in federal court. So those guidelines can be particularly high, especially if somebody is managing or leading other individuals who are also working for him or her. Also, if there are more than 10 banks involved or more than $1 million involved. There are all kinds of enhancements that the government can add to the federal sentencing guidelines, which really jacks up the sentence in those cases. The second kind of case that I have seen are individuals who are applying for loans, and they are submitting false information. So they could be making up information, making up a number of employees, making up the amount of their payroll, really bolstering the numbers so that they get more money from the government on these loans. So I've had an individual who created all of the documents from scratch. He created his tax records, he created his bank account records, he created Secretary of State documents with fake seals. You can have people, if they sign somebody's name, that can be aggravated identity theft that is added to the bank fraud charges. And that increases the sentence by 2 levels on the sentencing guideline range, which is, it can be a number of months. And that, actually, I take that back, identity theft adds 2 years consecutive to whatever the guideline sentence is. So the judge has no choice. The judge has to add 2 years to whatever other sentence in addition to that sentence, not concurrent, but consecutive to that sentence. The two levels that I mentioned are for money laundering. So if somebody gets a fraudulent loan and they engage in any financial transaction greater than $10,000 with that money, so a lot of people are buying property, they're investing in the stock market so that they can make money on these loans. That adds an extra 2 levels to the sentencing guideline range. And that happens in most of the cases that I have. People take out these loans, they're struggling financially because of COVID, and so they think, well, I'll just get this money and I'll invest it and I will make some money and then I can start a business or whatever it is, I can buy real estate and I can get the equity and then I'll pay the loans back. But the fact is they have gotten this money fraudulently and then they've used the money, which can be charged as money laundering. So then they're facing bank fraud and money laundering charges. The third kind of case that I've seen are people who are actually victims. And these are the people who have had these loans applied for them. These are people who did not know what information was being submitted to the government in their loan applications. They didn't sign anything. All of a sudden they have all of this money in their bank account. They knew somebody was applying for PPP loan, but maybe they were expecting $20,000 and they end up with $900,000 in their account. These are people that the government wants as witnesses. So these are people that may need representation, but they have a good defense. They can say, I didn't know anything. I had no idea that these people were, putting down these numbers or these amounts, and I didn't give them this information. I just gave them my name and social security number and date of birth, and they did all the rest of it. So these people are actually victims. They will have to give the money back. And the same with anybody who's charged in these cases. Any money that is still out there, so say it is in a bank account or it is in a property, these funds are going to be seized by the government. They're going to be forfeited. And even when a defendant or somebody charged in these cases agrees to give the money back, they sign all the forfeiture documents. In one case we hired real estate agents to sell the properties. There is still a process that has to be gone through in order for the victims or the banks to get their money back in these cases. So the asset forfeiture department has to release the money to the financial litigation unit, and then the victims have to submit petitions to get their money back. So that process can take a very long time. So somebody could be sentenced to, let's say, 3 years in federal prison. The government has taken all of their money. They have the whole, let's say, $1.5 million in restitution, but the victim hasn't actually gotten the money yet. So when they get to federal prison, it still shows that they owe that $1.5 million in restitution. So it can be a very long, drawn-out process. It can be very frustrating, especially for people whose assets have been seized. If there was money in the account prior to obtaining the loans, those funds should be released. And I have had that accomplished with a couple of clients. But so you can see there are these 3 different levels of cases that are being charged. I will tell you that the cases that I have or have had have been in the range of 1.5 million, 3 million, 5 million, and 11 million. So these are the big cases that I'm seeing in the Central District of California. I have one in North Carolina. I have one in New Hampshire. Those are all big, big cases. But there are other districts apparently where they are charging the smaller cases. And the final piece of news, the update to the update, is that yesterday President Biden extended the statute of limitations on these cases from 5 years to 10 years. So far, the government has only charged about 1,000 of these cases, which total about $1 billion. There are apparently about 1,800 investigations going on right now, which revolve around about $6 billion worth of PPP and EIDL loan money. However, by extending the statute of limitations, this gives the different agencies, Homeland Security, FBI, SBA, IRS, to continue to conduct investigations for 10 years and potentially charge people. So if you have submitted false information on any of these loans, you want to be really careful. You also, if you did obtain a PPP loan legitimately, you want to hold on to your paperwork for 10 years just in case someone comes knocking on your door. Now, if you are not under investigation, if you have not been charged with a crime, I can't give you any advice about your loans. If you are under investigation, if someone has knocked on your door and they said, we are investigating you for PPP or EIDL loan fraud, that is when you call my office. My contact information is in the description below.